principal of DEI Advisors. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to personal empowerment. I am delighted to welcome Dave Hilfman, who is a board member, a business advisor, and formerly the Senior Vice President of Sales at United Airlines and the former Executive Director of the Global Business Travel Association. Dave, welcome. It is such an honor to have you with us today.
Oh, thanks, Dorothy. Always a privilege to be with you. Thanks so much for the invitation to be a part of this today. And hopefully we'll be entertaining, inspiring, and engaging with anybody that ends up listening and watching.
You always do bring all of that value to us when we have the opportunity to hear from you, Dave. I was hoping we could get started and really just talk about your remarkable career progression, because I know you had an amazing journey where you started out as a sales professional and then you became the prominent commercial business leader at United, which I know for many individuals is an amazing and inspiring story. So I hope you be willing to elaborate on your career journey and share it with our audiences.
Well, sure, Dorothy. I can go all the way back to the beginning. Born and raised in Iowa. My mom and dad owned a clothing store, town of 6,000, beautiful Washington, Iowa. I'm laughing because I'm sitting here. There's some notifications coming out on my computer. So sorry about the dinging. Nothing on my phone, just figures. Anyway, but in Iowa was a great place. I've got a little sales experience selling suits and boys and men's clothing. It's just a great background. Somebody had to sell the farmers a lot of clothes. So my family was the one, and I felt so blessed about having a great upbringing. But my folks were smart enough, knowing the rather harsh winter conditions in Iowa, they had a little place in Florida. It's called Port Charlotte, south of Tampa, north of Fort Myers. And I used to go down, this is like in the late 70s, and there was an amazing university. It was a new university, University of South Florida in Tampa. And I just happened to stop in, got a chance to talk to some students that were there, and then ended up talking to some staff, faculty, and wow, what a great school. Apparently a wonderful new business school. And geez, it's warm in the winter. And Dorothy, I happen to be a fan of playing golf, which I'm sure we can get into how that might get involved in the business world. But I made the decision. Everybody else went to the wonderful University of Iowa, but I decided to go to USF. And I mention that because that's where I actually started in the airline industry. Eastern Airlines, which sadly is no longer with us in a commercial perspective. They are still I think somebody owns the brand and the logo on a charter basis, but Eastern was hiring a campus sales representative. And this is back in like 1981. And at the time, I happened to be a proud undergraduate student in finance, but I gotten quite involved in student government and the Interfraternity Council. And so I was pretty active on a lot of different fronts with students and charitable activities. And anyway, somehow the district sales manager at Eastern Airlines found my name, called, said, listen, we're starting this new program. We want to get these young, new, soon-to-be professionals in the working world signed up on our new frequent flyer program. And we'd like to sell some groups and whatever other revenue we might be able to get at the University of South Florida. And hey, you're probably too busy knowing all that you're doing, but on the outside chance, you might have some names for us of people. His name was George Tribble. I'll never forget him, was key to starting my career. I said, of course, George, I've got some great friends, really talented people. However, I really think I like to throw my hat into the ring if you'd let me. I think I can manage it. And anyway, as it turns out, I interviewed, so did a number of other folks. I was very fortunate to get the job. And that started my career in the airline business. It was amazing. I always laugh about it because my thinking was when I graduated school, I thought, hey, my background's now in finance and probably will be making my way in some banking role of some kind. But geez, if I could work in the airline business, what a great thing. I can fly all over the planet, maybe date a few flight attendants, and then someday I'll get a real job. And then 37 years later, I never got a real job. I got a career that I absolutely loved, and the rest is history.
Dave, can you talk a little bit about your mentors and how they helped shape your career?
Sure, Dorothy. I had some incredibly good mentors. A lot of folks will say maybe you'd have one or two. I understand the mentor is a very special designation in many ways, because you say you may have some teachers, but you really only have a few mentors. But I I'd like to count 5, 6, or 7 really strong mentors over the years, which I feel I'm lucky, blessed in many ways to have so many talented people that cared enough about me, wanted me to do professionally as well as personally. Of course, George Tribble, I mentioned, was my first hire, but I didn't get to spend a lot of time. He was very busy, full-time district sales manager for Eastern in Tampa. Probably my first mentor was a gentleman named Ken Stowe. He was the regional sales director in Atlanta, Georgia at Eastern. Took me under his wing. He was at the time, I don't know, maybe he was in his 50s. Here I am, a young kid in the early 20s coming out of college. And just as a quick aside, I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. He is 99 now, lives in Texas, still sharp as a tack, remembers everything. I think he's legendary in that regard. It's just most people aren't fortunate to be in that shape if they're even on the planet at that age. And so he just taught me the basics. He was all about hard work. Maybe it was a little different style back then, but it was a lot about putting the time in, being focused on the details, not just, hey, we want to make money or I got to get more sales. He wanted to be focused on the details, want to make sure we did business the right way, which in his mind was diligent follow-up, responsive to your clients. You don't let email, they didn't have emails back. We didn't have emails then, but phone calls, letters, following up, doing the reports right. Just a lot of the basics, it probably considered old-fashioned today, but ultimately ended up, he was very successful. His teams were very successful, and he gave me a really good start. From there, I mean, I had a number of other folks as I made my way through the airline years, but I remember very distinctly 3 or 4 others, and this is going through 3.5 decades in the airline industry, but a woman named Cindy Shear, who I haven't stayed in touch with as much as, but she was amazing. She was the director in New York City, and I was with Continental Eastern Sales. That was the joint venture company by Continental Airlines Eastern, where we sold both airlines. Very unique scenario at the time, lasted a few years before they split the sales forces back out. But Cindy, I'm a young sales manager coming up to New York City. She hires me. And here I am, I don't know, 28, getting to run the New York City sales office. And I just remember how much she helped me. She didn't just go, hey, have at it and call me when you deliver. She was very dedicated to sitting down with me on a regular basis, walk through, always asking questions, always offering up whatever advice you need, help you need. I'm here for you. Yeah, I've got a lot of other things because she was managing the whole, essentially, I think, all the East Coast at the time and that just greater New York area. But she even sat there and we worked for hours. I remember on a Saturday coming in, lining out the territories of our sales reps. We probably had 20 at the time in the greater New York area, maybe even more. I just remember the care and concern and attention to detail that she gave and that she was willing to give of herself when she had probably 5, 6, 7 other direct reports who were, maybe it wasn't quite New York City, but they were Jersey and Philly and Boston and Washington and all these other things she was watching over. And so I'll never forget that. And she never made me feel like I didn't know what I was doing. Even half the time I thought I wasn't. She showed a lot of confidence, which gave me confidence. She would certainly provide direction to me if she thought I was off track, which I certainly got occasionally. But Cindy Shear, and today I think she recently retired, very successful, left the airline industry, got into call centers and other things, but she was amazing. Another woman who was an extraordinary mentor is Bonnie Wrights, who is still very active. She's the chairperson of the Airline Reporting Corporation board. Previously to Eastern, then high roller at Continental, senior VP of marketing, ended up running a couple other businesses. And I just remember Bonnie, not only again, extraordinarily bright, creative, had a lot of structure, was able to rein in, if you will. Sometimes us sales folks will get very creative and that's critically important. But Bonnie laid out a lot of great plans and just said, hey, you can't use that great creativity of yours, Hilfman, if you can't, first off, map out where you want to go. You'll never get there. You'll be all over the place. I always appreciated that. And Bonnie was always very direct. She did it in a gracious way, but she absolutely did not mince words. She let me know exactly what she was thinking. She told me very directly. She didn't beat around the bush a lot. She could when she wanted to, but she didn't very often. And that was very helpful because, and she told me sometimes when I think I told the story before when she said one time, she goes, I'm worried because I think sometimes you like to be funny or you try to be funny. Humor is, I know, an important part of how you work your sales magic from time to time, but I don't want you to be seen as flippant because we want you to be seen as serious. And you can do both. You can be serious and have fun, but I want you to look flip. At first, I was a little offended, and then I realized she's right, and it doesn't matter it's the perception. And so I always appreciated her candor, honesty. She only meant to be in helping me, and we laugh about that a lot today. But again, one of the great mentors was Bonnie Wrights, and other names you can imagine between Gordon Bethune, Larry Kellner, Jeff Smizek, Oscar Munoz. My most recent boss was Scott Kirby, who was incredible. They were all wonderful mentors. There's others I'm probably forgetting. Jim Compton, one of my favorites, was my boss for 12 years at Continental and at United. He was incredible in so many ways, which maybe we'll chat about later. And then finally, hey, Dorothy, you were a good mentor because when I came on board at GBTA, and I'm sure we'll chat about that chapter, I needed some real help, some insights on some stuff that I had not been involved so much in the association side of our business. So I thank you for being a good mentor because without you, I don't think we would have been able to get things smoothed out at GBTA during the pandemic. And for that, I'll be forever grateful.
Thank you, Dave. And there's just a couple things that I'd like to just recap that I heard from you. Part of it was really that discipline of understanding sales and having a very foundational approach to the go-to-market strategy that your mentors provided for you. And the second was really around feedback, which to me, feedback has always been a gift. And to be able to listen and learn from others' feedback to you, I think is critically important. So those are important lessons for us all to keep in mind as we're on those growth journeys. That is part of our ability to really be able to deliver is to take that disciplined approach and make sure we understand foundationally how we approach things and always be looking for feedback from others that can really power our future. So thank you for sharing that, Dave.
My pleasure.
I'm also wondering if you can talk a little bit about relationships, Dave, because you know how much I admire you as being such a strong relationship leader. And when I look at you, I know that you're very intentional in terms about how you have crafted your investments in relations. And I'm wondering, I know when we chatted earlier, when you decided to step down and retire from United at the GBTA event, which I know was a few years ago, the vastness of the celebration and the recognition of Dave Hilfman was something I had never seen before. So I'm wondering if you can offer to our audience some of the tips and the success factors that allowed you to be such a successful commercial leader, but also invest in relationships in such an intentional way.
Thank you for the kind comments, Dorothy. As always, you're too good to me. I have to say, from my background, watching my mom and dad in the business, my dad was more involved in running the business, but I always saw his amazing approach to other people, the time, focus, and attention that he gave, the listening part. And I think my mom was very similar, and she was not on full-time sales, but I just saw her interaction with other people. And it was always about showing that attention and focus and never wavering in that when people are around you. That's a start in any relationship. I don't care if you're in sales, you're engineering, finance. The first thing other people want to know is that you actually might care about what you're saying, that you have an interest. Even if you don't, you could never show that. I mean, if you want to get things done, influence people, end up generating results, and I do believe it's always the right thing, even if you don't, not everybody agrees with me probably on this, but you need to show people you care, you're interested, you're focused, and you do want to hear what they have to say. And that is the start of when you talk about relationships. I always believe so strongly in that because my feeling was, with all things being equal, let's just talk about any product or service. And that's not always the case, but let's just assume everything being equal. Aren't people going to buy from somebody that they trust, and if they can. It's just so simple. And that always have that case because some products or services may be better. But let's just say the vast majority are pretty close to the same. And the pricing and all those things are the same. It just seemed like for the vast majority of opportunities, if you knew that starting out, then wouldn't you do everything in your power to find ways to interact with people, to connect people with people, so you give them every chance to actually believe in you, trust in you, and like you. And not everybody has the same personalities. In fact, nobody does. But there's certain qualities and characteristics. And one of the most important things is to listen to other people first. And that was one of the most, I think, critical things I would always tell my teams. And I learned from my most important mentors was listening. And yeah, that's said in every book. But not everybody actually does it. So listening, you can pick up a lot of things. It's different listening than hearing. Sometimes you can hear whatever somebody's saying, but you're not really listening, so you don't really process. So that was the key. That was one of the key issues. And then acknowledging that person's thoughts, their ideas, what they want. Again, I know we're coming at this from a sales perspective because that's the world that I lived in, you lived in, but it applies to anything in life. Once you acknowledge, hey, I understand. That doesn't mean you're always going to agree. In fact, there's many times you won't, and that's life and that's business. But those are two big steps: listening, acknowledging. And then my book was always trying to find a way to say yes, even if it's maybe. I always used to tell my sales folks that, again, the answer may be no. In fact, that may be the right answer, but try to find a way to some solution, some way to engage in doing business, expanding the business. Maybe it's totally net new business you're getting, but have the relationship, because maybe if things don't work out now, they'll work out down the road. And that's important for a lot of sales professionals out there. They may just think, hey, I didn't get that. No, you should always understand there's opportunities, if not today, tomorrow, and it's important to stay engaged. So I would just say, again, back to my focus on relationships, it was always, I know everything starts with the humans, and the humans make the decisions. We know in today's world, you have amazing products and services, this technology, all the financial brilliance, all of these things. I know computers, AI, all this that's going on. But in the end, still, people make decisions. People are the thing that can make things happen. And that's why it was always about, there's nothing more important than those personal relationships. And candidly, one of the toughest things through that pandemic, I think you felt it, is not to be able to be together in person. These are amazing that we have blessed to have, like Zoom and StreamYard and all these other great teams. That was critical during the pandemic, but not being able to be with another human in the same room face to face, because you just can't always replicate all those little nuances that you get. That was really tough for me during that time. Still had to learn to do it. Hopefully got better at it over time, but it all comes down to that personal face-to-face relationships. I think that still makes the world turn. I know a lot of people will say I'm old-fashioned, and maybe that's just not the right thing anymore. But to me, I think that's still what makes the world run. I think that's where business success is achieved. And for anybody in whatever profession you're in, even if you're a doctor, isn't it all about, you can be a brilliant surgeon, but if you still can't connect, you make your patients feel great. I don't know. I think you miss out on achieving the best success and results.
And I think that is really fundamental wisdom, Dave, that you're sharing with everyone. And I'll tell you, a recent Harvard Business Review article spoke about, they talk about human skills. They've changed the word soft skills into human skills. And all of the elements that you spoke about, that humanity and really bringing the human perspective forward first, they say drives 70% of success. So I think your approach to understanding and putting your humanity first, I do know that's why you have such amazing followership in this industry, Dave, and the likability and your positivity. You always bring forward that you're someone that sees the glass half full. So it's that optimism and looking for a way to say yes and affirm others in the way you approach business relations. So I think you're one of the most impressive individuals I've ever met in this space. So I thank you for sharing that wisdom with everyone.
No, thank you, Dorothy, for that. And I knew that Harvard Business School, they really did want to accept me into that MBA program. I'm sure if I had applied, I'm confident they would have said no, but they really deep down, I know that was it. But thanks for that. I didn't know they had done a recent article or had done some research on it. And you're right, Dorothy, interpersonal skills, soft skills, human skills. I'm not saying it's a lost art. Some people are still incredible at it. And I've seen that. And I'm so proud. I see a lot of my former team members at the airline, still my alumni airline at United. There's a lot of folks still there. And I love to see them in action. And that's other airlines, other travel management companies, hotel. I see it all around. But I wish they would literally have some formal classes around it. There's a lot of things that are nuanced in all of that, and they probably do. There's some schools that must do it, but it's just critical to I think achieving your best success in business and in life.
Yeah, I think you put forward that fundamental, and I do think the kind of mentorship that you spoke of that others gave to you, that's something you've given others. And I'm just wondering if that could be a jumping off point, because obviously when you were the SVP at United, you had a very large team in terms of the business. And I'm just wondering, in terms of your team leadership, how did you really help them with their development?
It was easy, thankfully, from my perspective, because I had incredible talent, and I can't take all the credit for that. I'd love to, but obviously came from the Continental Airlines side. I think we had about 600 sales professionals at the time at Continental around the world. And then when United, and they had, maybe it was close to 500 or 600 as well, and a great team. And obviously in any merger, you go through some tough synergy moves and you have duplication, and boy, that was tough. But we were very frank and candid up front with everybody and offered some great packages. So I just remember back to the merger days. A lot of it's the tone you set right up front. If you're honest and straightforward with people, they appreciate. They're adults, they're professionals. I think most people just don't want to be lied to, or obviously, but just be straight. And I think we had always said, listen, we're going to end up, we're merging two great companies with long histories, certainly have had their ups and downs, both of them. And we're going to do our best to avoid a bumpy road, but it's never easy to merge two big companies that 80, 90-year histories, different fleets, facilities, systems, and approaches, candidly. And I remember the United team was wonderful about listening. We had a number of Continental folks in the senior leadership roles. We had a couple from United as well, very talented folks. And we sat down and talked through how we were going to approach things. And we just said we wanted to be as transparent as we could. We wanted to hear everybody's insights and listen carefully. That doesn't mean we were always going to be able to do what everybody wants. Everybody knows that in business. It's just you can't always please everybody. We took about 4 or 5 months of touring around. We actually probably spent more money where we didn't just go in and cut down immediately and take out expense and people. We took the time, we listened, we thought through what might be the best approaches from both airlines to try to integrate them. And do we do it perfectly? No. We certainly had a bit of a bumpy ride. But in the end, what we came out with was a plan that I think everybody felt like we bought into. All 90% of the folks bought into it, maybe 10 didn't, but most did. We were very, I think, humane and generous in offering some packages up, saying, listen, you had 30 in New York, we had 30 in New York. Probably don't need 60, and everybody understands that. I think we did it in the right way when we offer people other opportunities in either other departments or different places to move, or great packages. Some people just elect, hey, no problem. Maybe I'm not crazy about this and I didn't really want to leave, but thank you for being reasonable and responsible. And I've got X amount of healthcare and severance. And I felt really good about that, how we approached that. And then with our leadership, main thing is I'd like to sit down with the leaders individually and then as a group, because each time I would sit down and ask them, okay, how are you feeling about how things? I'll tell you what I think in the end, but I want to know what you think. I don't want to just say, here's my vision, and then you guys all be nice and deferential and say, fine, I actually want to hear what you think. And all those leaders, it was great because they were, not surprising, very bright, confident, candid. I'm sure they would be nice when they had to be with me on certain things, but they laid it all out. And I listened very carefully to each of them. We all got together as a group. I shared a lot of feedback, and then gave them my thoughts about where I'd like to have things. And thankfully, in most cases, it generally meshed. Not every place. And then so when there was some things I would differ upon, we would have some good, frank discussions about that. Sometimes I've decided, hey, I get to make the call. Other times I think you're right. Let's go with that. So, Dorothy, it's back to what you said, and I know you were famous for during your time at Best Western and the whole huge group that you used to watch over, and all the other professional organizations that you've been involved with. It's you take the time, listen carefully, of which we've talked about before. Make sure that you're willing to make the decision when you have to, and don't be clear about that. As a leader, sometimes you're going to make decisions that won't always be popular. They won't necessarily be what everybody wants, but make sure everybody feels they understand the why. Here's why and the reasoning. And it's amazing how they'll buy in, or they will buy in with conditions like, hey, I'm with you. I'm going to go with you. I'm loyal to you for this. I really don't agree, but I get it. And it's amazing how people will end up getting behind initiatives or plans, even when they might say, hey, I told you so. I didn't think that was right. But in most cases, you know what? They give you the benefit of the doubt. And so with my leadership team, it was just taking the time. We met regularly. I didn't keep them bunged up in meetings all the time, but it was weekly. We talked. May not always have been sitting in person because I wanted these folks out and about. I got 100% market share at United headquarters. I don't need everybody sitting in the building. I mean, it was all about getting out. But we always stayed in touch every week because that was important, and I could hear what was going on in the market, the concerns, whatever it might be. And so in the end, with the leadership, I think it's, if you have your right communication in place, you're empathetic, you listen, you all agree on stuff, and then you march forward. And you're willing at the end of it to take a look at the results and make changes, and actually do make changes when they are required. It's incredible how people will buy in, and we'll all march forward together, usually to a successful outcome.
Which, of course, takes me to another question, because beyond you just being so beloved in the industry, there are so many women that just count you as one of the most remarkable allies that they have had the good fortune of having in their life. And I always think back to you at the Win It by GBTA events, how you would put on mixed high heels and have fun with all of us. But I'm just wondering if you can share any advice to others in terms of that commitment that you made to allyship and mentorship, and to really support so many women in their careers.
Dorothy, I just come to find out, at least in the travel business, my personal experience is women were so critical to our success and the sales organizations that I was involved with. And not surprising, it sounds like a man pandering to a woman, but I always thought the women were smarter anyway. My wife would always, of course, echo that, my mom, my sister, but truly, for half our sales force was comprised of women, which I always thought was great. Just not surprising, women are often viewed very tuned in the sales marketplace, great with other people. And beyond just the actual composition of the entire sales force, I think my last United, almost 2/3 of the leadership team was comprised of women. And listen, there was no numbers. Nobody's telling me you have to do that. It was just the right thing to. Women had earned those roles. I never saw where there was a situation where I wouldn't immediately go to my top women leaders for any situation, like I had to go to a guy here or I needed to hire a guy. I think I always felt so fortunate. The women I was around, thinking of Bonnie and Cindy, Monisa Klein, who I'm a huge fan of, and she still does some work at GBTA today, was my VP of Sales North America. Incredible talent. And I think I was just fortunate in this industry in particular, which I think has embraced women at the highest levels, including CEO, which there's still more work to be done. I know, Dorothy, right? We've talked about it. when it first came out, and Mick Lee, you, others, I just knew it's the right thing to do, not only because of my personal experience, what I've seen benefit our sales force at the airline, but I've seen in the travel industry, hotel, travel management companies. I think the car rental industry is still working at it. We have Beth Knurk, that's one of the all-stars, Laura Wright Smith. There's others, there's amazing talents. I think there's more yet to be done there, and I think they recognize that. But I knew when it just had the right mission. And of course, Mick was always somebody I looked up to, was not only an important client, but she was just such a driving force in the industry. And she could speak so clearly and articulately on things that I knew the whole industry needed to do. And we needed to get better about continuing to promote women into leadership roles, not just hiring into companies. And I was happy that I was able to commit United's resources to that, not just money, but people and our time. People like Cindy Hunter was so key, and Eileen, and there were so many others that were critical to helping out and win its mission. And to this day, where the carriers are very involved, including our friends at Delta and I think American and others. Yeah, Dorothy, I feel blessed because I was with great people. They happen to be women. I think it's important for male, those are men out in the industry, to help promote continued shattering any ceilings that are there. And I think most of them are busted. There's some left, but I feel like I was the lucky one on that. And thankfully, again, I had some great bosses that were women who helped me understand and see the light in a lot of that. And one other thing, you asked me about positivity and why do I see the glass half full all the time? And one of my heroes, and it's a little bit of a sad story, which you already know, but I always like to bring, it was my first wife, my late wife, Tracy. She was always a hero of mine. She was in the airline business. She was a flight attendant at first, then an HR. But I just saw how hard she worked. And I knew she had some concerns and she was occasionally frustrated, but she kept in there and kept getting promoted. And she left Continental, went to Southwest, did great there, ended up leaving that business, went to Shell Oil. And she loved the business. She also loved it when she became a mom, and pretty late in life, in fact, at age 44. And of course, then she loved becoming a mom. She liked both. She was an industry professional and a mom. I know you know that story. And I just was always so impressed by her incredible dedication to the business and to her family. Sadly, she was stricken with breast cancer. We lost her in 2010, but it was the same time as the merger was going on. And my late wife told me at the time, she said, honey, because we talked about maybe I should just leave and get out and let's do some, I'm just going to focus on you. And she said, are you crazy? I've got an incredible team here at MD Anderson in Houston. What, are you going to lay on the couch with me? This merger was important to you. Your son needs to see you working. We need you to continue on in this, honey. She was just great about it. And if she not told me that, kind of give me permission, said, you follow your dream on that. It's important to you. And I did. And she passed away in October of 2010, and the merger had just completed. And without her encouragement and her dedication to me and caring about it, I wouldn't have carried on my airline career. Maybe I'd have done something else. Who knows, but I'd be forever grateful. She was a hero. And so from that day forward, Dorothy, when she passed away, I said, how she wanted to be around so badly for me and for her son, our son Marshall. And I decided every day I was going to find a day to be happy to be on the planet, be here, be focused on doing the right things for other people. Yeah, you got to be in tough business, and that's fine. You'll have your everyday frustrations and stress, but I'm happy to be alive on the planet. I'd carry on for her in that. And so when you talked about that, always looking at the glass half full, that's where really it comes from.
Thank you for sharing that beautiful story, Dave. I had not heard that story quite the way you shared it with us today. And I'm someone that believes our partners are the wind beneath our wings. And it's
Yes,
wonderful to hear that story about Tracy. And I know it has been an important part in shaping your life and Marshall's life. So thank you so much for sharing that. We're
absolutely.
we're coming up near the end, Dave, of the interview. And again, if I can just thank you for taking the time today to share your wisdom with all of us. I'm always grateful to be in the room with you, Dave. You
Dorothy,
really are an icon.
it's a privilege and a pleasure. Truly, I love spending time with you. You're always so kind, but beyond that, it's just fun to chat. Thank you again for the invitation. And for everybody that listened, hopefully there was a few nuggets there. You had some fun, and let's do it again, Dorothy.
Thank you, Dave. So, if I could also just express my thanks to our audience and just remind everyone that if you've enjoyed this interview with Dave, I hope you'll come and visit us on our website, deiadvisors.org, where you'll see webcasts and podcasts from other industry leaders that will empower your knowledge and fuel your spirit. So, I hope to see you there. Dave, thank you again, and we will be in touch.